comes quite naturally in time. When you do this, be careful that you are holding the pot firm in the center, not pushing it off as you put the clay around the base. Okay. This is a rather slow, laborious business, making these teapots. They are the most labor-intensive things I probably make. That is, in terms of time spent on, you know. I also make teapots that are much less labor-intensive. This teapot requires a lot of turning like this and fitting up the lids and making lugs for the handles that are quite a lot of work in them. That lid, quite honestly, is a little slack. I don't like them slack at that. I made it a bit small. And so later on, I should put a lug on here. So the lug, as you probably know, you've seen on a commercial teapot, when the teapot is tipped up, the lug catches on the underside of that and stops the lid from dropping up. That is a little bit slack, this lid. Anybody like to feel it?
Too heavy.
Don't forget, functional things when we're full of tea.
Oh gosh, it's so light.
It's too heavy.
I better throw all my things away.
Very much.
Too heavy, Shirley?
Very much.
Here.
When I fluted it, it'll be a little bit lighter. But then I've also got to put the spout and lid and lugs on, so they all make the weight. right moment. But we'll let go. It's about right. And then the lid. Now, at home, my alloy wheel head is stickier than this, but I'm not quite sure what mine is of alloy. It's quite the same kind. And I find I can stick things like this down on the wheel head and expect them to stay stuck. Much better than they are doing here. All right. There are lots of times when I have to say to you, don't do as I do, do as I say. Because in a way, the more practice you get, the more sort of risks you take, or can take, which are not recommended, shall I say, for people who are less practiced. Right, let's hope for the best now. Now, I know a lot of people don't do their lids this way. They throw a thick and then turn the knob out of the clay. I prefer to add the clay to make the knob. Make it a little big first. Slurry.
Excuse me.
Throw it on. That means modeling it.
Okay, for this
Really.
demonstration, but I think we're going to figure a way to set the camera on something later.
Make it slightly big.
It's heavy. Your dad is stronger than I am. His dad is not like one shake.
Then use this round-ended turning tool.
We have a tripod. See, we could do that. I was gonna try.
Now, practicality, you want a certain amount of undercut on the lid, or knob, so that it's easy to grip. So often I see people making knobs, you know, your fingers are going to go like that, slippery, because there's nothing to hang on to. So, this is just enough. It's a little bit deep. And again, a little small point. This has got a slope. That slope, that slope are related. If they are points of form relationship. Okay? Now, it's going to be a little small. So you take a little bit of clay like this. Now, there are other ways of doing that. Some people pull that out like the lip of a jug. Why not? with sponge, it's good for getting into a place like that. Now, it's a loose lid, but it wouldn't really pass. I would make another lid.
I don't think we'll know the difference. I'll speak for myself.
By the way, David, if you found that all your pots had disappeared, they went into the kiln.
Oh, I did
Behind
notice
your back.
a few. Oh, I noticed a
They
few.
weren't quite dry.
I know, I noticed that too. I was glad they didn't take
And that
them
applies
off.
to several people who may suddenly find there are no pots around, you know, because they were short of pots. But they're taking the precaution of having a very slow firing over the night, just to dry everything up. And the firing really is only beginning this morning, seriously. Don't worry, I don't think any of them go up. Right, spout. Now, I made the spout, I thought, and I think I said so at the time, it's a little bit on the big side for this pot.
It's very heavy. I'm going to have to do something
How
else.
about this?
To see if we can get it. We have a tripod that maybe we can.
I take a pretty hefty slice off it.
It's all right. It doesn't get
His face. What about
bring.
Try this angle because you can get right in.
I'm just going to get him framed up, and then I'm going to watch and see what he's doing myself. I think this is pretty good. This is good. That's great. This is good, yeah. Yes.
Can we just turn it on without there's a close up?
Don't worry, it's not going to be as long as that. Now, if you look around for some place that's sort of dent or a scratch the one's covering up. There's one. I know what you're saying. What about the hole? Not yet.
How do you know that?
Again, don't forget, a practical teapot. What size holes? How many? What kind of tea did you drink? Fine? Or
English tea, of
big
course.
leaf, lapsang, souchong, which is it?
Could be both. Earl Grey.
If it's fine, why bother making the holes at all? It's all going to go through anyway.
That's right.
That's right. I like
Lipton
that.
and-
Just like that.
So,
Oh, look.
about a dozen holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Now, porcelain, attaching something, you know, like a spout or a knob or a lid, you do need to have the similarity of hardness between the pot and that. The tendency to crack in drying is much greater than it is with stoneware, and therefore you have to accommodate. See, whereas in the stoneware pot you wouldn't have to bother to do that, in a porcelain one you might want to do that. You need to slow it. This is the glue. Now, that's been dipped so that that's soft, that end. Now you attach. Remembering that this point here must be fairly well up on the pot. Therefore, you have to cut the spout at an angle. Very prone to cracking and drying at that point. Take extra precaution in sticking it on. Get the back of this round. Make sure that's adhering really good. Right, now the spout is well and truly fixed. And I've got to cut down the sides. Sharp, thin blade.
What are you gonna do with that piece that fell off?
Throw it away. Put it back in the.
You ready for the out of it?
Now, you notice that I cut it down now, size, and then cut it back off at an angle like that, all right? Now, this is something you don't have to do with earthenware and unrichified clay. You do have to do with porcelain, particularly porcelain and stoneware clay, because that spout is going to turn like that in the final fire. It won't do it very much in the biscuit kiln, but it will in the vitrification stage. It will turn that way. Now, so the big question is, how much allowance? And there are three controlling factors. One is the length from here to here. The longer, the more it will twist. The thinner, the more it will twist. In other words, the spout is rather thick, it will twist left. The other factor is the temperature. The higher the temperature, the more it will twist. Three quite logical factors. So, how much? I can only tell you from personal experience, and you will all have to learn from personal experience in no other way. But you can take that as being probably about right. For that thickness of spout, that length of spout, for firing at, say, cone 10, open 10, you have to come up flat.
It always twists in the same direction? Same direction?
Always the same direction, unless you're a left-handed potter, turning the wheel in the opposite direction, and then it's the other side. Anybody like that? One freak. Right.
And we love it.
But you don't turn the wheel the other way. do
No,
you?
I learned to throw with the right hand.
Well, then it
first.
doesn't matter.
Ah.
You see, it depends on the rotation of the wheel. All right? Right. Now, just look at that. What do you say? Don't you think a bit clumsy round here, a bit thick? Now, I threw that spout clumsily. I threw it too big, and I threw the thickness of the wall here a little bit too thick, so that it looks clumsy and certainly won't pour. So I'm going to core it out a bit like this, which I don't recommend you're having to do. You ought to make the spout the right kind of wall thickness in the first place, so that's less necessary. Now another thing I'm doing, I'm thinning it out towards the tip of the spout. At this point, sponge it a little. Soften off that hard edge. And soften the tip of the spout because we're going to tip it over a little bit. spout mustn't be too hard when you do this or it'll crack. I'm just tipping the end of the spout slightly over. It is a bit hard. This is just to an insurance against bad pouring. Now, I don't guarantee my teapot, ever. If 50% of them really pour well, I think I'm doing a good job. Some of them dribble a little bit, and it's extremely difficult to make a handmade teapot spout unless it has a terrific turnover there. It doesn't. And everybody knows that a kettle doesn't dribble, and you know why, because it's made of metal and the edge is very thin and it cuts off the liquid. But if you start trying to make pots like that, especially when some of these ham-fisted children one hangs about in one's family trying to do the wash-up for you. Right. Now, you can see the slightest tip over. And I find that's as much as one can do, really, in a shape of teapot spout like that, to guarantee its, well, half guarantee its portability. Just while we're on that, has anybody met those teapots where you have a hole in the end of the spout? A little tiny hole, you'll find, put about there. Okay. Lovely theory. You know, little small hole, pouring in tea into your teapot, coming out like Niagara Falls, and then put it up like that. And the volume of water is running back into the teapot, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
A little drop may have formed there that wants to run down the thing. But because there's a gust of tea going back in there, sucks that drop in with it, and down it goes back into the teapot instead of down on the tablecloth. Now, it's a lovely idea, and many people have tried to make teapots to make that work. But it's so critical. The diameter of the hole is important, the exact positioning of the hole is important, and the fact that the glaze that you put it in may reduce the diameter of the hole, and you may forget to core it out before you put it in the kiln. All sorts of little things that really actually prevent it from working. I've very seldom seen a teapot where it really worked. I believe it's a German idea. and I think you can sort of feel the German technical mind behind it.
Now, when you send that out, David, did you send it out a little on this side also?
No, I thinned it down the middle with this tool, across
down?
like that.
Yes.
You see, because I'm not expecting the tea to come out at an angle this way. I'm
Yeah.
hoping it'll come out into the cup. Now, one other little point, the hole in the lid. Why do you have a hole? Why is there a hole there? Now, come on, let's have some answers.
So it pours.
Hmm?
You don't lock in the
You don't get a vapor lock.
vapor lock.
Ah!
We call it vapor lock. So the tea will come out and it won't be held in there
That's right.
by the...
Well, if you make a teapot, a good one, with a lid that fits, not like this one that it's not, theoretically, as the liquid goes out, you're trying to make a bit of a vacuum in there.
vacuum.
So to compensate for the tea coming out, you've got to have some air going in. That's the real reason. Now, if you make sloppy lids like this, you don't need them. You need a hole. Because you see the air gets in around here. So really you don't need the hole in the lid. You see, a lot of silly things you do. You put holes in the lid, you put big holes in there for the tea, it's supposed to strain the tea and it doesn't. So. Right, anyway, that's that. It's a little bit heavy. Next thing are the lugs. Two ways of making lugs, as far as I'm concerned, in a teapot like this. One is to roll a couple of little snakes, you might say, and them over like that, and like that. Now, I don't think this particular teapot, from a design point of view, wants that kind of rather plastic handle, because it isn't a very plastic-looking teapot. It's a very articulated, angular form. And I want to put lugs on here, so I'm going to have to model, that are in keeping with that angularity. Don't forget, I was trying to make a pot in which the whole thing is integrated. Every component part of it is complementing the whole and not fighting against it. And in a kind of a way, to put this kind of rolled, very plastic lug onto a teapot like that is slightly non-integrated, if you see what I mean. Bringing in a very plastic element, you're pressing out there and pressing out there, all very plastic. Whereas the rest of the teapot is very, it's not plastic, it's all been turned and it's hard lined. So, for that reason, I put a lug on, which can take a little time. Just a little bit out there. Going to be like that, and they're too soft now to do. When they're a little bit harder, and I've got them in position, I carve down there and there, so that I get a sort of line there, a line there, picks up the line there. So the whole thing is a little bit more, what's the word, sort of architectural. Now, I can't put those on immediately, because they've got to dry a bit. I've got to model them a little more precisely, and then get them to much more related hardness to this, which is quite hard, and this, which is quite soft. So they've got to dry a little bit, and then I'll put them on. Now, I think just wondering whether just to keep you waiting about when I do that.
Do you flute it now, or do you flute it
So I
later?
tell you what, we'll put these out into the sun. I'll model them a little more, put them in the sun, and just for the few minutes they'll take to dry out, 5 minutes or so, we'll perhaps stick together, and I'll do something else. I wanted to make a little covered box. I think one or two people missed out on my throwing the lidded box. I want to make, Elizabeth, you wanted me to make, or you wanted me to, I might just make that at this point.
I'd like to see that too.
Now, you see why, in kind of a way, I'm a little bit loath to take you away from your making, especially having told you that you've got to make a lot of pots and get them out to the sun and get them fired back up. So this sort of thing is all very interesting, but it doesn't help you get those pots made. So we have to balance the timing.